Wasn't that beautiful?
Yes.
But I must apologise to Ruby from the bottom of my heart. This is the second time running when she's sung for us. We messed the music up for her. But it was beautiful anyway. And now we invite Pastor Crawl forward.
What a joy, blessing and a privilege to be among brothers and sisters and friends on this beautiful Sabbath day in Bury St. Edmunds. We begin today a journey of 13 presentations, the next one being on the 28th of November, and which will be entitled Reach Up for Life. Then we go to the 19th of December, Blood on the Moon, a mysterious sign. Then we'll come again in January and continue throughout 2016. The dates will be announced as we go along. Now, today's message presentation, a new world empire soon to be established. Many throughout history have dreamed of setting up a world empire. Such names as Caesar, Napoleon, Kaiser William, Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, Hirohito. They have all been obsessed with this desire, but they have all been doomed to disappointment. There is a biblical iron curtain which forever bars this march to world conquest. There are 7 words of Bible prophecy which have stood through centuries as a mighty barrier against the wild ambitions of vain-glorying men who have wanted totalitarian powers. And this mighty barrier will hold firmly against any power in the world today. The disciples of Christ asked him about the future of our world. And in Matthew 24:3 we read, "Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?'" So the disciples associated the two events, so Christ foretold the great events connected with the fall of Jerusalem and also of the end of the world. So after Christ told of the political, economic, religious and social signs that would mark the end of the world, he also told his disciples in Matthew 24 verse 15, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place," whoever reads, let him understand. Christ here makes it clear that the prophecies of Daniel had particular significance in regard to the future events of the world. In the 2nd chapter of Daniel, we find a brief and enlightening history of world events right down to the end of time. The story is told of King Nebuchadnezzar, who was the ruler of the first world empire, known as the Babylonian Empire. He realized that he had seen something of great significance in regard to the future events of the world. So Nebuchadnezzar sent for the astrologers, the magicians, and the wise men to discover, if they could, what he had dreamed. So the king soon learned that the so-called wise men were fakers. They could not tell him a thing. There are many people today who make the same mistake that Nebuchadnezzar made, and when they endeavor to find out something about the future, they resort to astrology, fortune tellers, the horoscope, you name it, when they should be consulting the Word of God instead. And so Nebuchadnezzar realized that he had been duped by these parasites. We read in verse 12 of Daniel chapter 2, "For this reason, the king was angry, he was furious, very furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. He then dispatched the chief of the king's guard to gather in all of the wise men for a mass execution." Now there were some young Hebrew captives in Babylon at the time, Daniel and his companions, and they were considered to be among the wise men. Daniel, however, asked for time to consult his God regarding the king's matter. The time was granted, and after Daniel and his 3 companions had prayed earnestly to God, the dream was revealed. Daniel was ushered into the presence of King Nebuchadnezzar. The king asked in a very cynical way, "Are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation?" So here was an opportunity for Daniel to claim the glory for himself. But being a true servant of God, he did not do so. Daniel made it known that while all of the so-called wise men were not able to reveal the matter, there was one who could make known the dream. Verse 28, "But there is God, a God in heaven, who reveals secrets. And he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar." Hello?
Yeah.
Go on. Next one.
Oh, sorry.
"What will be in the latter days?" So I noticed that Daniel said that God was revealing something that pertained to the latter days. So Daniel foretold the king's dream. In verse 31 we read, "You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome." Daniel then described in detail the awesome scene of the giant image that Nebuchadnezzar had seen in his dream. And the king immediately recognized the forgotten dream. And in verse 32 and 33 it says, "This imaged head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay." The king was indeed amazed, and Nebuchadnezzar's cynicism was gone. He now listened intently as Daniel told him more. But there is more in this story. In verse 34, we read, "You watched while a stone was cut, and with our hands we struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces." Now the king remembered the dream. More than ever, he wanted to know what that dream meant. And so in verse 37 and 38, Daniel says, "You, O king, are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. You are the head of gold." Gold was a fitting symbol of the beauty and wealth of the Babylonian Empire. The glorious walled capital was laid out in perfect squares, 60 miles around the walls. Its lofty palaces and towers formidable approaching travelers. The Euphrates river ran through the city, flanked on each side by gleaming gates. There were luxuriant leisure grounds, royal palaces, magnificent dwellings. There were the hanging gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the world. But God said in verse 39, "But after you shall rise another kingdom inferior to yours." And just as God had predicted to Nebuchadnezzar in this marvelous dream, the Babylonian Empire finally fell, the second world power called the Persian Empire. And the chest and arms of silver represented the kingdom of Medo-Persia. And as silver is inferior to gold, so the Persian Empire was not as wealthy or as luxurious as was the Babylonian Empire. So when the Medes and Persians laid siege to Babylon, they were scoffed by the Babylonians. They threw tons of food over their walls to show the Persians they could withstand a siege for any period of time. And however, under Cyrus the Great, the Medes and Persians finally got through into the city and Babylon fell. And so in the last part of verse 39, it tells of the third kingdom, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. The third kingdom of brass symbolized the Grecian Empire led by Alexander the Great in conquest of the world. Alexander's army, although smaller in numbers, soon conquered the Medes and Persians. In 5 short years, Alexander swept onto victory. The Greek historian Arrian writes, "I am persuaded there was no nation, city, nor people then in being